Hello, I'm Ray. I know it's mentioned. I originally am from Florida in the States. I grew up there. Let's see, a bit about me. I've been in YWAM almost 15 years now. Kind of did DTS for 19 for a gap year, and now I'm here almost year 15. Yeah, I've served, let's see, I did my DTS in the Caribbean, then spent some time on staff in Colorado, then spent 4 years in Kona. That's where I started off doing my SBS there in Kona. And then staffed, right afterwards I staffed the DTS and then came back and staffed 2 years of SBS in Kona. Helped run the first chronological SBS in Kona. And then at the end of, it was the summer of 2011, I felt I was coming to the end of my time in Kona, but I was sitting around the office and just hiding in the AC because it's really hot, watching Netflix or something. The school wasn't going on, so it wasn't really up to much. And then our department leader, Yo, wheels up to me and he's like, "Hey, I got an idea. We want to try to get more DTSs to do Bible schools." I'm like, "Yeah, that's a really good idea." Because the numbers of DTS students going into SBS were just like shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And just a lot of people just were afraid of the academic level or just thought SBS was too dry or whatever. So together with a few other staff that were kind of hanging out, we started dreaming up what could we do a little bit different. 3-month Bible overview reading course. Which kind of turned into the DBS. So I helped kind of create the school. That's just kind of how these things happen. You're just sitting in the office one day. What do they call it? The Bible Overview Reading Course. And so Yo kept talking about the bork, and we're like, I think it was we're trying to all right, we want to continue the DTS process and stuff. So I think I said that I was like, how about discipleship Bible school? And everybody went, yeah, that's a little smoother. Doesn't sound like a bad Russian meal. We just kind of brainstormed together, so I helped create the DBS. And then from there, the plan was actually for me to go to the Middle East, go to Israel, and run an on-location one. Long story short, that one didn't work out, kind of fell apart. But in the meantime, I started working with Phil, which you had last week, right? Phil Leash. He had come to Kona to get away from King's Lodge so he could focus on building the online SBS, which I think you probably mentioned. So I started just working from home, helping out with some of the really early days of that, some basic videos, some grading. Since kind of everything fell apart, he basically invited me to the King's Lodge, and so then I spent 4 years at the King's Lodge. And in that time, YWAM Next Wave, the YWAM ship that's in Europe, that's run out of England, had contacted Phil and said, "Hey, we'd love to do some Bible stuff on board, because we're going to be in the Mediterranean, and Phil was older, he's got family, etc., etc. So he came to me and was like, "Hey, would you be interested in doing something like that?" And so I talked to him, and they're like, "Well, we want to try something new with the Bible, we don't know how it works." And I was like, "Well, I got a school that we haven't figured out how it works, so there's lots of flexibility." So, long story short, 2014, I led a DBS on YWAM Next Wave, sailing yacht. And we started in Cyprus, and then went to Israel, and sailed up to Turkey, crossed the Greek Isles, ended up in Malta, and then we flew to Rome.
It was not a shipwreck, right?
Not a shipwreck, okay. Yes. We did have to go into dry dock in Malta, so we kept living on the ship. So this big ship was in a big steel U dock that floated, and we're living inside rather than working. And it was the hottest 2 weeks of the year. I can show you some pictures, little pictures of that later. Let's see what a little more story. Went off of that pretty exhausted, because when you're ship life is Yeah, we did normal school stuff, but we're also crew. So we also, our work duties is scrubbing the decks, scraping the rust of the stove hull, repainting it, going to the dry dock. And then we sail. We were on the crew, so you're up 4 hours, 3 or 4 hours in the middle of the night, raising, lowering sails, watching the radar. So it was just really exhausting. And we did archaeological tours. I'll show you some pictures and some stuff from that eventually. So that's the idea, is kind of like we went to Israel, brought in an archaeologist I knew, SBS guy, covering SBS, and mad rush through Israel, seeing all the sites. And then we did Ephesus, we did Corinth, we did Athens, Malta, Rome. So it was a lot of class, but I was exhausted. Eventually came back to England for a second round, and that time we started talking again about doing Bible seminars, shorter, 1-2 week kind of things. With the ship, so that's why I came back to Europe. Then I got to Europe, and a month later, they decided, well, we're out of leadership, we're out of crew, and $500,000 in debt to itself, to YWAM's long story. So we don't know what to do. Should we sell it? Should we try to get another YWAM base to help, or give it to another YWAM ministry? And I was like, oh, okay, so what am I doing here? But then I felt the Lord speak, and the Lord spoke to some of the leadership over it. And that's right when the refugee crisis started happening, all the refugees coming on the rafts across the Mediterranean. And so they're like, well, it's going to take us 6 months to figure out what we're going to do, try to get another ministry or sell it or whatever. It's already in Greece, let's send it to the refugees. And they basically asked me to go and be the ship director, manager, whatever, for 6 months. So in 2016, I picked it up. Part of Greece and sailed it, eventually winding up in Lesbos. That's where all the rafts kind of cross, most of them. So I managed the ship for 6 months, but that got me into refugee ministry. And then went back to England, exhausted again. Then a year ago, I co-led DBS at the King's Lodge. But in that time, it took a week, and because I got into refugee stuff, somebody from Hurlach invited me to come and teach in a Persian mini DTS in Dresden for a week. And that's how I got connected with Germany. And my visa for England was running up, and long story short, I ended up back in Dresden. Does that make sense?
So you're in Dresden now?
Yeah.
Okay.
And what do you do in Dresden?
So now in Dresden, we're a brand new YWAM team in Dresden. We're kind of an extension of Hurlach. There's only 5 of us. We just live in apartments around town. But our kind of main official ministry at this time is there's a Persian, mainly Iranian church that has started. And we know the pastor, and so we're just helping with discipleship. So I do Thursday night Bible studies, just hang out with people, our girls. Lots of one-on-ones, lots of just stuff. We're bringing outreach teams. We just had several outreach teams there. We run a little mini FCM for them. We run a little DTS for them. We run, but also beyond that, just building relationships with the city, connect with the German churches. And there's some other youth ministries and prayer ministries and stuff going on in the city. So it's really that kind of pioneering, building relationship. Very random. I wake up most days having no idea what I'm doing that day. It's just kind of that outreach mode where you're just kind of like, all right, Lord, what are we doing today? And kind of go for it. So that's the season now. Not being attached to a Bible department, I've been also just working on getting opportunities to come and teach, because I really enjoy doing that as well. And then I think next year we want to try to do some more Bible seminars. We're actually going to try to do the Bible seminars with the ship in Greece. So that's another project we're working on.
Awesome.
A bit about me. Quickly, you could just introduce yourself, just your name. I have them here, but your name, where you're from.
Können wir uns kurz vorstellen, wie ihr heißt und wo ihr herkommt?
Yeah, I'm Benbai from Hurlach. I'm Sabrina from Switzerland.
Ulises from Venezuela, but you can call me Uli. I like that.
Crystal from America, lived in Australia, based in Germany.
I'm Anna from Germany.
Yeah, I'm from Turkey.
Ola from Poland. I'm Lena from Germany.
Bernie from Germany.
I'm Camille, or Cami, and I'm from Chicago, but now I live in Germany with my husband.
I'm Benny from Bavaria.
Cool.
All right. Oops, let's go in here. Yeah, this is going to be an interesting week.
Also das wird eine interessante Woche.
I helped create the school and we put a Paul week together.
Ich habe geholfen, den Kurs zu starten und wir haben so eine Pauluswoche da reingesetzt.
And then now I have to teach it.
Und jetzt muss ich das unterrichten.
I realized how the heck am I going to do 12 books in one week?
Ich weiß nicht, dass ich alles in der Welt 12 Bücher in einer Woche unterrichten.
Talk about shooting yourself in the foot.
Aber zum Schluss der nach hinten losgehen.
So this is going to be an interesting week. We'll see how it goes.
Das wird also eine interessante Woche und wir schauen mal, wie das läuft.
So I'm going to be kind of figuring it out a little bit, kind of as we go through it.
Ich werde mich da selbst noch ein bisschen rantasten und jetzt da loslegen.
So it's my first attempt, but the plan is to kind of re-walk through Acts a little bit.
Und es ist jetzt so mein erster Versuch. Der Plan dabei ist, dass wir Paulus Spuren folgen auf Apostelgeschichte.
I know you had Acts last week, but this week I'll focus on Paul planting the churches.
Ich weiß, dass ihr letzte Woche schon Apostelgeschichte studiert habt. Diese Woche ist der Fokus darauf, welche Gemeinden hat Paulus gegründet.
And we'll pay attention to the events that happen while Paul is there.
Und wir schauen uns an, was dann passiert ist, welche Ereignisse während Paulus dort war.
Because often if we know those events that happens in Acts, it gives us a real insight as to why Paul is writing
Und
this
wenn wir
letter.
uns bewusst sind, was da passiert an diesem Ort in der Apostelgeschichte, dann hilft uns das zu verstehen, warum Paulus bestimmte Dinge in seinen Briefen schreibt.
So really this week is very much it's a mentorship, it's a discipleship kind of week.
Diese Woche ist ein großer Fokus auf Mentorenschaft und auf Jüngerschaft.
Everything you're reading this week is something Paul wrote to a church he planted,
Alles, was ihr diese Woche lest, ist etwas, was Paulus zu einer Gemeinde schreibt, die er gegründet hat,
or a church that he wants to come and meet.
oder an eine Gemeinde, die er besuchen möchte.
And a few of them are personal letters actually directly to people.
Manche davon sind auch persönliche Briefe direkt an andere Menschen.
So it's very pastoral, it's very mentor, it's very discipleship.
Das Ganze ist also sehr pastoral, sehr auf Mentorenschaft und Jüngerschaft fokussiert.
So when you read these letters, remember to read them in the context of this is not just I'm throwing out some theology. This is I have a relationship with you and I want to something's wrong and I'm trying to help you.
Wenn ihr diese Briefe lest, dann behaltet Folgendes im Kopf. Hier geht es nicht darum, nur dass Paulus ein bisschen Theologie rauswirft, sondern er hat eine Beziehung mit diesen Menschen und er sieht Probleme, die sie haben und er möchte ihnen dabei helfen.
Sometimes the letters are very friendly.
Manche der Briefe sind sehr freundlich.
And today we'll look at a letter where Paul's actually quite angry.
Und heute schauen wir uns auch einen Brief an, wo Paulus ziemlich sauer ist.
So pay attention to these details.
Also achtet auf diese Kleinigkeiten,
Okay?
diese Einzelheiten.
So the plan for today is we'll talk about the first missionary journey,
Der Plan für heute ist, wir schauen uns die erste Missionsreise an,
the churches that he planted,
die Gemeinden, die er gegründet hat
and the letter that he writes later to them.
und den Brief, den er später an sie schreibt.
But before that, I want to talk about Paul a little bit.
Zuvor möchte ich noch ein bisschen über Paulus sprechen.
I don't know what exactly you covered last week in Acts, but
Ich weiß ja nicht, wie viel ihr schon gemacht habt letzte Woche in Apostelgeschichte.
Paul is both a Roman citizen and a Jew.
Paulus ist sowohl ein römischer Staatsbürger als auch ein Jude.
He was both. He grew up in Tarsus,
Er wuchs auf in Tarsus,
which is by Lake Turkey, right in Pieratt somewhere.
was in der modernen Türkei liegt, da oben in der Ecke.
So he spoke Greek.
Er sprach also Griechisch,
He knew Hebrew.
er kannte aber auch Hebräisch.
All right. And there's, I don't know if Phil covered this, but there's this kind of little bit of a misconception that in the Bible, after Saul's conversion, he changes his name to Paul.
Ich weiß nicht, ob Phil was dazu gesagt hat letzte Woche. Es gibt noch ein bisschen Missverständnis, dass Paulus seinen Namen von Saulus in Paulus gewandelt hat, als er sich bekehrt hat.
He actually always had both names.
Tatsächlich hatte er schon immer beide Namen.
Saul is his Hebrew Jewish name,
Saulus ist sein hebräischer, sein jüdischer Name
and Paul is like his Latin, Greek, Roman name.
Und Paulus ist so die lateinische oder griechische, römische Version davon.
So he always had both.
Hatte immer schon beides.
I think it switches in Acts because he begins to minister to the Gentiles more.
Und da sehen wir diese Veränderung von Saulus in Paulus später in der Apostelgeschichte, weil er anfängt hauptsächlich unter Heiden zu dienen.
So he's using his Latin, Greek, Gentile name with them.
Und mit ihnen benutzt er dann diesen lateinisch-griechischen heidnischen Namen.
Okay. We also know that he is a Roman citizen.
Wir wissen auch, dass er römischer Bürger war.
He argues later in one of his letters, well, actually in Acts, about being a Roman citizen, which gives him certain rights.
Später bringt er das mal auch hervor und zeigt, dass das ihm bestimmte Rechte gab.
It means he gets a trial.
Das bedeutet zum Beispiel, er erhält tatsächlich eine Gerichtsverhandlung.
He can't be punished in certain ways.
Er kann nicht auf bestimmte Art und Weise bestraft werden.
He can't be crucified.
Er kann auch nicht gekreuzigt werden.
He can't be beheaded.
Aber er kann geköpft werden.
That also gives him the right to plead his case to Caesar.
Es gibt ihm auch das Recht, seinen Gerichtsfall vor den Kaiser zu bringen.
Which you might remember from last week.
Vielleicht erinnert ihr euch daran noch von letzter Woche.
And he's also a Jew.
Paulus ist auch ein Jude.
And so he's both Roman and Jewish.
Er ist also gleich römisch als auch jüdisch geprägt.
So Judea was part of the Roman Empire at the time.
Judäa war Teil des römischen Reiches zu der Zeit.
But just because your land is part of it doesn't necessarily mean you're a Roman citizen.
Aber nur weil du in diesem Reich lebst, hieß nicht automatisch, dass du römischer Bürger warst.
But his father was a Roman citizen.
Aber sein Vater hatte diese Staatsbürgerschaft.
And there was different ways you get Roman citizenship. Either you buy it, or you're part of a certain clan, or military service, or whatever.
Es gab verschiedene Möglichkeiten, diese Bürgerschaft zu erhalten. Vielleicht hat man sie gekauft oder man war Teil einer bestimmten Familie oder man hat in der Armee gedient.
But Paul inherited as a child.
Paulus hat das geerbt als Kind.
Okay? It's also his profession, his actual money-making profession. You might have known he's a tent maker.
Paulus hatte auch einen Beruf, mit dem er Geld verdient hat. Das war ein Zeltmacher zu sein.
And that's actually beneficial for him and important later in some of the letters.
Und es war auch nützlich für ihn. Und das erwähnt er auch später in einigen Briefen.
Talk about. But he also had a very strong Jewish education.
Er genoss auch eine sehr starke jüdische Ausbildung.
He was basically trained up in being the way of a Pharisee.
Im Prinzip war das die Weise der Pharisäer.
And he went to one of the best Jewish schools in Jerusalem.
Er ging an eine der besten jüdischen Schulen in Jerusalem.
He was trained by a teacher, a rabbi named Gamaliel.
Dort wurde er von einem Lehrer und Rabbiner namens Gamaliel ausgebildet,
Which he shows up a couple times in the Bible.
der auch ein, zwei Mal in der Bibel auftaucht.
And he was considered one of the wisest teachers in Israel.
Der war damals als einer der weisesten Lehrer in Israel angesehen.
Somebody want to read Acts 22, verse 3?
Kann jemand kurz aus Apostelgeschichte 22 den dritten Vers lesen?
Then Paul said, I am a Jew, born in Tarsus, a city in Cilicia, and I was brought up and educated here in Jerusalem under Gamaliel. As a student, I was carefully trained in our Jewish laws and customs. I became very zealous to honor God in everything I did, just like all of you today.
Alright, so there's the Acts evidence of Paul's training.
In der Apostelgeschichte sehen wir also Hinweise auf seine Ausbildung.
So he was well trained in the Old Testament law, the prophets, and as well as the Jewish teachings and traditions that followed.
Er war also gut ausgebildet im alttestamentlichen Gesetz, in den Propheten und auch in den ganzen Traditionen und Lehren, die daraus folgten.
But he also received an education in classical literature, philosophy, and ethics.
Er hatte auch eine Ausbildung in klassischer Literatur, in Philosophie und in Ethik.
And so we'll see actually in his letters as well, he is very well versed in Greek philosophy and rhetoric.
Das ist auch etwas, was wir in seinen Briefen sehen, dass er sehr gut sich auskannte mit Rhetorik und mit klassischer Philosophie.
And he has a very proficient knowledge of Stoic philosophy, which he uses to communicate with his Gentile Greek audience.
Er hat ein tiefes Verständnis von stoischer Philosophie und das benutzt er auch, wenn er mit griechischen, heidnischen Menschen spricht.
So he would have studied both Hebrew, but his everyday language was most likely Greek.
Er hat also viel in Hebräisch studiert, aber seine Alltagssprache war wahrscheinlich Griechisch.
So this wide Jewish and Greek educatum actually made him very effective for this ministry.
Diese breite Ausbildung, sowohl Jüdisch als auch Griechisch, machte ihn sehr effektiv in seinem Dienst.
You know, I used to think Paul, God was one of these things, I'm going to pick the most unlikely vessel, this guy named Saul.
Ich dachte manchmal, bei Saulus, da hat Gott echt die unwahrscheinlichste Person ausgewählt, um sein Werkzeug zu sein.
But the more I learned about Paul, the more I realized how really he was the right man for the job.
Aber je mehr ich über Paulus gelernt habe, desto mehr habe ich verstanden, dass er tatsächlich der Richtige für den Job war.
He was really well trained in understanding the Greeks.
Er war sehr gut ausgebildet und konnte die Griechen damit gut verstehen.
And he was very well trained in understanding Jewish theology.
Und er war auch super dafür ausgebildet, die jüdische Theologie zu verstehen.
And so this is why he's the man that wrote the foundation of our New Testament theology.
Deswegen ist er der Mann, der die Grundlage unserer neutestamentlichen Theologie geschrieben hat.
And he was able to communicate both to Jews and Greeks
Und
Gentiles.
er konnte sowohl zu Juden als auch mit Heiden kommunizieren.
And in his passion, he persecuted the church, and he was present at the martyrdom of Stephen.
Ihr wisst, in seinem Eifer hat er die Gemeinde verfolgt und er war auch dabei, als Stephanus, der Märtyrer, tot starb.
So again, that kind of makes him seem a bit unlikely.
Wieder sehen wir da, okay, ist vielleicht jetzt nicht so der typische Missionar,
But considering his knowledge of the culture, language, education, influence with Roman Jew, that's why he's perfect for this job.
aber wenn man sich überlegt, wie es für ein Verständnis er hat, sowohl von den Heiden als auch von den Juden, ist er doch perfekt für diesen Auftrag.
And we'll talk about today as well, as he also received the gospel directly from Jesus and God.
Und auch etwas, was wir heute noch besprechen werden, er hat das Evangelium direkt von Jesus, also von Gott, empfangen.
All right, so again, a little bit about his writings. Again, these are pastoral letters that mostly to churches or people he worked with.
Ein bisschen was über das, was er aufgeschrieben hat. Das waren hauptsächlich pastorale Briefe an Gemeinden oder an Leute, mit denen er gearbeitet hat.
Sometimes you'll see repeated themes or phrases.
Manchmal sehen wir auch Themen, die Paulus wiederholt, bestimmte Ausdrücke.
But these letters tend to provide continued discipleship and instruction, but also deal with unique issues in each church.
Und es geht darum, Jüngerschaft zu vermitteln, Anweisungen zu geben und auch mit bestimmten Situationen umzugehen, die in jeder Gemeinde vorherrscht.
And the advice that he gives is both theological and practical.
Und die Anleitung, die er gibt, ist sowohl theologisch als auch praktisch.
Also note, we probably don't have all of Paul's writings.
Was auch was Interessantes, was wir bedenken sollten, wir haben wahrscheinlich nicht alles, was Paulus geschrieben hat.
These are the ones that survived, the ones that thought were worthy to keep around and obviously put in the canon.
Diese sind die, die überlebt haben oder die von Leuten als wertvoll empfunden wurden, dass sie Teil von unserem Kanon sein sollen.
For example, when we get to Corinthians, actually 1 Corinthians is probably his second letter to Corinthians, and the second letter is probably like the fourth letter. There's actually a whole chain of correspondence going on.
Und wenn wir zu den Korintherbriefen kommen, dann sehen wir, dass 1. Korinther wahrscheinlich schon sein zweiter Brief an die Korinther war und dass 2. Korinther der 4. war. Das heißt, da gibt es eine ganze Kette von Korrespondenz zwischen Paulus und den Korinthern.
And as I mentioned, we're going to review the missionary journeys and along the way.
Und wie ich schon erwähnt habe, werden wir uns die Missionsreisen nochmal anschauen, diese Woche.
Because it provides really excellent information into what's going on in these churches.
Weil uns das auch mit toller Information versorgt, was dort los war in den Gemeinden.
We can understand Paul's relationship with that church.
Dann können wir Gottes Beziehung zu
We can look at
Paulus Beziehung zu der Gemeinde besser verstehen.
we can look at the key events that happened while Paul's there,
Wir können uns die Hauptereignisse anschauen, die passiert sind, während Paulus dort war.
which provides lots of clues of the issues and challenges each church faced.
Und es gibt uns Hinweise darauf, mit was für Themen die Gemeinde zu kämpfen hat.
Okay? And Paul has a particular writing style.
Paulus hat einen ganz bestimmten Schreibstil.
It generally follows the same format with some small exceptions.
Gewöhnlich folgen seine Briefe demselben Format mit kleineren Ausnahmen.
And he followed a very customary Greek writing style and format.
Und das ist ein typisch griechischer Schreibstil für Briefe.
I can write it up here. And so when you read a letter, you always see at the beginning there's a greeting.
Wenn du so einen Brief siehst, dann hast du am Anfang immer eine Begrüßung.
Paul list to whoever, to some church, Paul, and disciples to whatever church.
Also so die Grundinformation, Schreiber und Empfänger.
And that includes some kind of salutation and a blessing.
Und da drin gibt es dann noch so eine Begrüßung selbst und eine Segnung.
And then he has a prayer of thanksgiving.
Dann gibt es ein Dankgebet.
And so, just the way to get a blessing, it's very formal, very polite.
Das ist wieder sehr höflich und auch formell.
And then after that, he finally gets to the body of his text.
Dann kommt er endlich zum Hauptteil des Textes.
And that's the main message.
Da kommt die Hauptbotschaft.
And then there's a final greeting salutation.
Und dann gibt es am Ende nochmal eine Begrüßung und einen Abschluss.
Okay? So as you read through these things, you can pay attention for these little bits as you read.
Ihr könnt das also in den Briefen verfolgen und schauen, wo diese Teile zu finden sind.
And one he really sticks to within the body
Und etwas, was bei Paulus echt Normalität ist, innerhalb von dem Hauptteil.
the way Paul writes is he first starts off with a bunch of theology.
Zunächst bringt Paulus eine Menge Theologie.
And then so what he's doing is he's establishing some kind of spiritual truth.
Da etabliert er so eine geistliche Wahrheit.
He's addressing the root issue or the problem within the church.
Er spricht die Wurzel an des Problems, das in der Gemeinde vorherrscht.
And then once he's established that truth,
Und wenn er dann mal diese Wahrheit etabliert hat,
he goes into, okay, how do you walk that out applicationally?
dann kommt er dazu, okay, und wie leben wir das jetzt aus in der Anwendung?
So theology to application.
Es ist also immer Theologie zu Anwendung.
Kind of like you prophets, you have destruction and restoration. You'll have theology to application.
Wie wir bei den Propheten auf Gericht und dann Wiederherstellung haben, so ist es bei Paulus Theologie und Anwendung.
Sometimes Paul's writings will transition a little bit,
Manchmal gibt es da so einen allmählichen Übergang bei Paulus,
but often you can find a big therefore.
aber oftmals sehen wir ein großes Deshalb.
And then it'll be very, very practical from then on.
Und ab diesem Punkt wird es sehr praktisch.
So look for the big therefore.
Also haltet Ausschau nach diesem großen Deshalb.
Because this is true, therefore do this.
Weil das wahr ist, deshalb tut dieses.
So this is important to knowing how to, apply Paul's works to our lives.
Es ist wichtig und es hilft uns dabei zu wissen, wie wir Paulus Schreiben in unser Leben anwenden können.
I recently had a struggle. I was doing a little, small group Bible study for some friends over in Dresden.
Deswegen habe ich ein bisschen damit gekämpft. Ich habe so eine kleine Bibelstudiengruppe vorbereitet in Dresden.
And we're at the very beginning, and they're trying to go apply it,
Und das war ganz am Anfang. Sie haben ständig versucht, es irgendwie anzuwenden.
And they're going all over the place.
Und haben alle möglichen Ideen dazu gehabt.
And I stopped and explained this to them.
Und dann habe ich gesagt, Moment, ich muss euch das erstmal erklären.
Like, you need to understand the truth,
Ihr müsst erst die Wahrheit verstehen,
and then you can apply it.
dann könnt ihr sie anwenden.
And with Paul's writings, at the very beginning, it's going to be a little bit hard to maybe think directly into application.
Und bei Paulus schreiben ist das oftmals so, am Anfang ist es ein bisschen schwierig, da irgendwie zur Anwendung zu finden.
So be a little bit patient with it.
Also seid da ein bisschen geduldig mit ihm.
Let him get to that